Welcome back to Q-Tronics, guys. Yes, today I want to talk about some things that everyone keeps forgetting to mention, and it is important. Obviously, we all on this massive hype train that is the Switch 2. We're all really excited to get our hands on it, but we have to remember that there is competition out there now for this, and I think we all forget. So I'm going to go through some of that details as well. I think it's going to have a bit more of a rocky start than you think it will. Anyway, before we get into that, I last year said I'd be giving away this Nintendo Switch when I hit 1,000 subscribers. That is still the case. I do need to fix the Joy-Con on it and mod it so it becomes a modded Switch. I've not had time to do it yet, so I'm planning to make sure this is ready for the giveaway at the end of the month. So if you want a chance to win that, you need to be subscribed to the channel, and I'll release a video next week explaining the whole procedure for it. So something you're interested in, don't forget to subscribe. Anyway then, let's get into the video. So back in the day, eight years ago now, when the Switch launched, it was revolutionary. Regardless of the fact it was underpowered versus everything else out there in terms of big consoles and computers, it was a revolution. Finally, we had a console that we could pick up, play, go home, drop it in, and literally carry on seamlessly. There's nothing about having to stream to your phone or stream to another device or anything like that. It was purely drop the console in, slide the controllers out, sit on your settee, and we're in. Now, the Switch 1 did have a rocky start, as it only released with about 10 games. You can see them here on the screen. There's not many, and obviously one game there stands out, which is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Absolutely fantastic game. But you can see Nintendo only really released 3 games there, all the rest were third party. Now, going into the Switch 2, we won't have this issue because obviously we have the backwards compatibility. So we'll have games on day one. Now, my question is, if you've only got Switch games on day one, is the upgrade worth it? Obviously, we're on the hype train, so we're going to buy it. But the average person might, that's not worth a buy. We've seen Mario Kart 9, or whatever it's going to be called, and it's clear that that's probably going to be a launch game. There's a few AAA games out there that have mentioned they're going to be out, stuff, potentially on day one. Microsoft are really pushing all of their big games. Potentially the Master Chief Collection is going to be out. Assassin's Creed Mirage will be out on day one. Shadows to follow. So obviously these big AAA games are going to be out there on the Switch 2. Here's the question though. Some of those games released before the Switch 2 has its direct, which means they'll be out before the Switch 2 is released, because we're talking about a May or June scenario now. So most people would have played those games. Now, if your Switch is your only console, yes, maybe you'll buy it, but let's be honest, those games aren't going to be cheap. Nintendo first-party games won't be cheap for whatever, but there's already speculation. We see that the Master Chief Collection is going to be full price on the Switch, for example. Now, we're going to have a day one where you can play some games that are great and will be new to the Switch, but they won't be new. Does that make sense? They're going to be new to the Switch 2, but they won't be new. And at the end of the day, Nintendo didn't have this competition before because, again, the Switch 2 was so underpowered versus the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox that actually the games that it got started to be unique. I remember when I first picked it, I remember beat 'em ups back in the day before he was super amazing, multi-million channel. He used to do a series of eShop drops because there were no games, because only other companies were making the games there. Now, yes, that sounds like I'm actually trying to say the Switch 2, but they were unique. There was something a little bit different. The Switch was always about having something different to the mainstream. Whereas now we're going into the Switch 2 world, and it's going to be the same, right? It's going to be, I can play this on the Steam Deck, I can play it here, I can play it there. So again, Nintendo have competition now. Now, unfortunately for Nintendo, they made their own competition because the Switch was such a great console that everyone now started to copy. And I think this can be compounded by a recent development, and it's something I want to talk about on the channel, and that is a lot of adverts, apparently. Bloody adverts. And that is the fact the Lenovo Legion Go S was announced at CES. Now, for those who don't know, this is Lenovo's latest console. So obviously with the Lenovo Legion Go S, you will be getting the Z1 Extreme and 32 gigs of RAM, which, if we look at the Switch 2's leaks, the Switch 2 is only looking at like 12 gigs of RAM. So like more than double, which is an absolute ridiculous amount of RAM. So you've got to remember, now Nintendo has competition. And the thing is, obviously we've seen that Valve are not releasing a Steam Deck 2 just yet. But let's be honest, it's going to be happening. They will release a Steam Deck 2. But the key thing here about the Legion Go S, which is exciting, is it will be using Steam OS. Now, normally, they've all been using a version of Windows, and obviously that has a lot of overhead. This is the first time Steam OS is on something other than the Steam Deck. And the reason that's important is because, obviously, when it comes to Windows machines, you buy a game on Steam, and it's going to work across all your devices now. And this is where Nintendo had you before, because obviously you could dock your Switch, and obviously so you're almost getting this 2-for-1 experience. When it comes to a Steam Deck, the odds are if you've got a big Steam library, you've probably got a gaming computer as well as a Steam Deck. So you've almost got that pick up and play, transfer over, even streaming games to your Steam Deck. But as time goes on, these handhelds are going to get bigger, are going to get better, sorry. And the fact that Steam isn't just putting Steam OS on the Legion Go S, they're actually actively developing Steam OS for it, which lets me think other third parties will be in on this. How long till Asus are in on this and we get a ROG Ally S or whatever, or other companies jump on and use Steam? Because if Steam's willing to adjust their source code of Steam OS to support these consoles, that means technically we should be getting shaders for them as well, which again makes them better. And the thing is, in 3 years' time, Lenovo won't care about making a Legion Go S 2 or a Legion Go S 3, or will I get a Steam Deck 2? The problem is Nintendo are going to have that Switch 2 for probably another 8 years. So we're now going to be stuck on that level for 8 years. It's fine now for the next 3 or 4 years, but like the Switch is having issues now, we'll have those issues down the road. Even Xbox has this issue with Black Myth Wukong saying that they won't put it on the Xbox at the moment because Microsoft tell them they have to support the Series S, and the Series S has 10 gig of RAM, I believe, and they said they just can't do it. So at least the Switch 2 has slightly more RAM than that. But again, when big developers are saying we can't do it, there's clearly reasons where Nintendo will start to fall off. And that's before we even consider the fact that Steam Steam regularly has more sales than Nintendo does. And if you're buying from the eShop, you're going to get absolutely RAM blasted. Yes, technically you might be able to pick these up in physical, so you can get some second-hand resell on them if you've got physical copies, which you can't do with Steam, so that is a selling point. But again, you're already going to have seen most of these games on Steam. You might have already played them. So unless the Switch is your sole console, I would still question buying third-party games on the Switch 2. For me, it's almost a hard one. Obviously, if you've seen this video, you've seen the fact that I talked about Monster Hunter recently, and that is probably the only game where I will buy it on both, because Monster Hunter is amazing. Obviously, any game that I review on the channel, I'll have bought on the Switch as well. Typically, I'm buying third-party games on Steam because I have a Steam Deck. So there's that. And obviously, when it comes to backwards compatibility, that's a big selling point for the Switch 2. But Ryujinx works on the Steam Deck and the Lenovo. So clearly, playing all the old IPs is possible. And in a few years' time, when the other handhelds have moved on and the Switch 2 is still where it is, you'll probably find other handhelds will be able to emulate the Switch 2. And then at that point, your only reason for buying a Switch 2 is for the IP or for the love of the Nintendo console. Again, people like myself, maybe you watching, will buy one because you love Nintendo or you're really hyped about the console. But we're starting to that point now where Nintendo has dedicated competition. So clearly, it's not just as easy as if you want a handheld now, you buy Nintendo, and that's a big problem. And then finally, the last 2 points I want to make is two of the biggest games this year to drop for Nintendo are going to be Pokemon Legends ZA and Metroid Prime 4, and both of these games are slated to be Switch 1 games. So yes, it's possible we might get a Switch 2 patch for them, but Pokemon Company have definitely said that it'll be a Switch game, and Metroid Prime 4 is aimed to be a Switch game. So clearly they're going to have the limitations on them that is already opposed on the Switch. So even if we do get a Switch 2 version of it or a patch update, it's just going to be better graphics. It's not going to be, we can do more with the game engine because we've got more raw power. So again, I think we're going to have a bit of a rocky start for the Switch 2 because the value isn't going to be there initially. Obviously, as I've said, I'm buying one day one because I want a Switch 2. But it feels like we could be in the weird scenario compared to 2017 where we have the games. It's just the games, they're older games now. The games that have already been out for months. So actually, unless we're getting AAA patches on day one for the future games, it's going to be a hard sell, I think, for some people. And not only that, lots of people have only just bought a Switch this Christmas. It's still sold well. Are those people going to be ready to buy again this Christmas? I don't know. It all depends on how much you love Nintendo's IPs, and that's the big one here. Until we see that thing on April the 2nd, it's going to be a lot of speculation around what's actually coming to the Switch 2, and Nintendo really need to hit it out the park on day one with some big titles. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts. Obviously, were you picking up the Switch 2 on day one? And are you buying third-party games on the Switch now? Do you own a PC or a Steam Deck? And do you still buy third-party games on the Switch? Let me know in the comments. I'd be really interested to know if you're still buying these third-party games, even though you can play them on another console in better quality and having the ability to move back and forward between a PC and a handheld. Let me know. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, as I will be giving away that Switch Lite at the end of the month. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.